to the Adventuring Party for the 3rd week of April 2021. This week, we review the new Digimon card game to Save the CCG World. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop related gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Sean.
I'm Eoin. I'm still Savage.
And I am a currently quiescent Warlord Scarr.
And today I'm very excited because we're dipping into something that was a big part of my childhood as the baby of the party, but not maybe not a big part of other people's childhoods. We're going to talk about the new Digimon card game, which is got to be the 7th or 8th attempt to license Digimon into a game of cards, but maybe the first that's actually worth paying attention to and good, certainly if you're a fan of cards, or maybe just a fan of Bandai's favourite digital monsters. Not to be confused with Pokemon, very distinctive creatures. Fans will let you know in a hurry.
Oh, they definitely will.
So I picked up some cards when they went on sale, and have not actually gotten around to playing it because it's 2021 and life is hell. But Eoin, you picked up some cards as well.
I did. My brothers, who are both younger than me, were both big Digimon fans as younger individuals. And this Digimon CCG came out, and I said, "Hey, I'm hankering to play a CCG. Do you guys want to give it a go?" And they both said, "Yeah, actually, yeah, that sounds like fun." So I bought some starters. I bought a box of boosters just to see, because I'm always curious about
distribution of rarities.
Yeah, and kind of how much would it take to build a good deck? Because I'm a CCG player. My inclination is I actually want to build a good deck. So what is this going to cost me in real terms to get in and get something playable? It's always cheap. It's always cheaper if you got a group where you can split. But
yeah.
I was kind of curious how much, you know.
I was very impressed off the bat, and I don't know how competitive the cards in them are, but I was very impressed about starter decks. So I've previously played a few CCGs, but I kind of moved over to more living games because I was sick of the cost. But if you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And you want, and a good new deck comes out, and you want to build something competitive with it, you got to buy 3, because there's a max of 3 cards of the same card in a deck, and you want 3 of the good cards, so you got to buy 3 decks every time a new deck comes out. So, not to my surprise, when I opened up the Digimon deck, and the cap on Digimon in the Digimon game, as I understand it, is 4 of a type, and there's 4 of almost every card in this deck.
Yeah. They're actually very good starters, and from what I can see, the cards in the starters are unique to the starters. They are not in the boosters. So if you actually want to get at least one starter, if you're going for I want every deck building option, you would buy 2 of the starters.
Because some of the cards there's only 2 of in the starter.
Yeah, but they're the more expensive cards, so that sort of makes sense. Yeah, interesting system. So from looking at the game, playing a bit of the game, it's based on the Chrono Clash system, which is an interesting card system, which has basically done a bunch of sort of effectively living card game style sets, where you basically go, I want to play this card game. I want to play a living card game. Cool. There's like 3 universes out. There's Naruto, there's Godzilla, and there's Evangelion.
Oh, so similar idea to Versus, that they just throw in any property they want and build a deck.
Basically, and you can go and you go, okay, I buy this, and this is my Godzilla deck, and I can build, a deck with Godzilla or whatever monsters I want to use in it, and that's my deck, and awesome, I get to play that. That's cool. They use kind of colors to separate out sub-factions, but you can build kind of what you want. And Digimon is a version of this with a twist to make it more like Digimon. So that's kind of cool. So every modern CCG has to tackle resource generation, because Magic was the original, where you have deck cards in your deck which are just there to provide resources. That's all they do.
And a lot of card games basically just lifted that and put a spin on it.
Yeah, and it's a bad system, but it was the system we had, and it's very difficult to move away from it. So, I say bad. It's not purely bad. It allows bad players to beat good players occasionally. That's the main reason to keep it around.
I will throw out some games simply do not have a resource system.
Yeah.
I think my mind goes straight to Keyforge and Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you just play cards without cost.
Yeah, and that has its own Advantages and disadvantages. This one, the way it does it is every card has a cost. Okay. However, the resources exist as a tug of war. There is a resource track which goes from.
I'm going to show this to our co-hosts
in the middle of the table, which goes from 0 to 10 on each side. If I play a card, it starts at 0 at the start of the first game. If I play a card that costs 3, it moves 3 spaces towards my opponent's side. If at any point the resource token crosses over into my opponent's side, my turn ends. It is now my opponent's turn. So I could go turn 1. If I could play, I've got a 7-cost Digimon. I'm just going to play this 7-cost Digimon right now, and it moves 7 spaces to your side. Your go. Now, you have now 7 resources to play with. You could play 2 or 3 cheap cards. You could play another really big card in response. It all depends. You should never really be in a situation where you can't play a card. You can almost always play a card. I say almost always. Some cards cost more than 10. So it means that they need to be, like, you need to be at least, if it like costs 12, it's like your opponent needs to give you at least 2 resources before you can play the 12-coster and drop something really ginormous on the table.
That's a really interesting mechanic.
So it's a tug-of-war system, so you're never really out of the game. You've never got you can have a hand that's bad, but you can never have a totally unplayable hand, which is... That's cool. That's cool.
I do like that idea that you're kind of bidding away initiative. You're saying, here's my big play, but I'm giving you the fuel to respond. So I hope it's a big enough play, otherwise I'm in trouble. And then maybe you can try and sort of resource starve your opponent by not being as generous. But of course you're having to play a very miserly game.
So my understanding is you cannot give over initiative with big plays and continue out to the end of your turn, and when you end, your opponent will simply get some resources anyway.
So the second you play, I play a card and it moves to your side of the board. I resolve the effects of playing that card, then it is your turn. So it's not like, okay, I play my monster and then I do all the stuff with them. No. You play your monster. Resolve his effect, coming to play effects, you're done. So it ends, like, you got to be careful because you can end your turn. You can be like, oh, I need to play this guy, but that ends my turn, so I'm going to do this other thing first, which is not optimal, but I've got to do it like this order, or I'm giving up my turn. So that's the resource system. How do you win the game? You win the game by basically attacking your opponent's security deck. So Digimon is this weird sort of thing where they're computer programs and they're monsters and they're two sort of things together. So you've got this at the start of the game, you take 5 cards on top of your deck, you put them face down without looking at them. They're your security stack. And every time someone attacks with a Digimon, they can either attack one of your Digimon, or they can attack your security stack. Every time they attack your security stack, you flip over the top card of the security stack, and you resolve what happens. Now, there are 3 kinds of card in your deck. Okay, you've got basically option cards, which are like spells. All right. So basically, I'm going to show you one here called Memory Spark. Memory Spark is an option card that says main phase, gain 1 memory. So if I'm just playing this card for free, I can go, I'll play this and gain a resource. That's what the card does. If I flip it over from the security step instead, I check at the bottom of the card, which is a different section text box, which is the security text box. And what that says is gain 2 memory. So that means if someone attacks into your security deck, you flip this over and you go, actually, I've gained 2 memory. Let's just move it over to my side of the board. So after this attack, your turn is over. So it's another nice little twist there. So those are option cards. The second type of card you can have is trainers. Now, trainers are they come into play and they are a static buff, and they represent the characters from the Digimon anima.
Also, the video games, I've noticed.
Yeah. So these are the humans. So when you flip one of these, or you play it, it goes to play it as a permanent buff effect. Almost all of them have an effect from the security zone to play this card without its memory cost. So they just immediately pop into play. So if you hit a spell off the security deck, the spell goes off. And it has generally a different effect. Some of them don't have an effect effectively in the security phase. So what they do is usually say is put this card in your hand instead. It's like, this one gives me plus 3,000 power when attacking. Put this card in my hand and says my security effect. Okay, cool, I get a card draw. So you always get something from getting hit. So as you're losing the game, you're getting more resources. all right, which is generally a good thing.
That's really interesting.
The third type of card is the Digimon themselves. When you, if you...
I would as far as say there's two different kinds of Digimon cards, but carry on.
Yeah, there are two, but for the purposes of attacking with the security stack, there's only one. All right? So if I attack into the security deck and I flip a Digimon, that Digimon is considered a security Digimon, and the two Digimon fight. Now, Digimon fighting is really simple.
Whoever's the biggest number wins.
The bigger one wins. You compare DP, which I think are Digimon power.
Who knows? It's a big number.
We could make up all sorts of...
Absolutely. You compare the two of them, and the higher number wins. The lower number is deleted and goes to the discard pile.
7,000 there in the top corner.
If they are equal, they're both deleted. Now, because it's a Japanese game, this number up here could be 3. Instead, it's 3,000. So every Japanese game will just multiply the numbers by 1,000. And that's just the way they do it.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen nothing that isn't a clean 1,000. Like, the biggest... Like, I've seen 13,000 monsters. I've seen no 13,020 monsters. It's just 13,000.
There's... Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very similar. There's, of all the hundreds and thousands of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh!, there is a tiny handful, maybe 7 or 8, that do not have clean 1,000 values.
So, yeah... That's the way of that. So it's a kind of a tug of war game where you can, if you've got small number of big monsters, you can kind of do board control by squashing your opponent's monsters. Or you've got going for a swarm and you're going, okay, I'll swing and I'll try and take more security cards off your deck and I'll try and win the game by basically blitzing you down. If you are attacked and you have no security cards, you lose. You've effectively you can eat 5 attacks before the 6th attack kills you.
And you potentially get stronger for each of those attacks you get hit by.
Does attacking cost memory? Because that's what...
No. Playing cards cost memories. Any monster on the field can attack if they are not tapped or suspended, I think is the
Some Digimon have what's called the blocker trait, which is when you get attacked, if they're unsuspended, if they're straight, basically you can tap them to block an attack. Many of those, the cheaper blockers, have things like cost, attack, on attack, forced on attack, pay 2 basically spend 2 memory. So it's like they are bad because they're not very good at attacking because they're blockers, and blockers are very strong. So they have that disadvantage.
I think I have one blocker here I can show you. It's just a dragon, and it's just got the effect blocker somewhere on its text there.
Yeah, and it's got when attacking, lose 2 memory. So a lot of the cheaper blockers are like that. So you don't want to attack with. They're kind of it's good in one way because it lets them be a little more powerful. But the disadvantage is you don't want to attack with them because attacking with them could end your turn.
Just leave them in the way,
more or less.
So the memory system is like you have to play a card, but still have some memory left so that you can then trigger free attack, basically.
Yeah. Now, classic CCG rules, the turn a Digimon comes into play, they can't attack. All right? With one sort of exception. Okay? Now, because it's Digimon, it's all about digivolving. All right? So the way digivolving works is in your play, you have your standard 50 card deck. You also have a deck of up to 5 cards called your Digi-Egg cards, which have a different color back. Okay, and if you flip them over, they each contain a level 2 monster.
Level 1s are babies, so there's no level 1 monsters on cards.
No level 1s at the moment. So you get level 2 monsters. The smallest monster in your deck will be level 3. So if you look here at a level 3 monster, you'll see there's 2 costs in the corner. The first cost is the memory cost if you play it from hand into play, and then it resolves its in-play effects. The second cost is the Digivolve cost, where you can play it, instead of basically paying this guy's cost of 2, I can play him for free onto a level 2 monster, Digivolving him. Whenever I Digivolve a monster, I get to draw a card.
And that makes it, to me, it seems like that's the core drive of the game, because that's your resource generation.
Yeah, you're basically can go, it doesn't matter that my monster's small and crap. I can just play him for free or nearly free and draw another card, and that's another monster. Or a spell, or whatever. So I get more options.
Which I can then Digivolve again and draw another card, and...
Exactly. So if I wanted to play this guy, Garurumon, who's cost 7... right? That's a lot of resources. But to Digivolve, the level 2 monster to level 3 is free. to digivolve the level 3 to a level 4 might cost 2, and to digivolve into the level 5 version might cost 3. And I also got to draw a bunch of cards.
And that's a saving of 2 resources overall.
Yeah. And also, as you play them like that, they stack up. And some of them have evolution bonuses. So they get to keep an effect. So all of the level 2 Digimon, the Digi-Eggs, have an evolution bonus because they're never going to be in play. But what they do is say, okay, this guy gets a bonus if a certain criteria is met. So there's a big advantage on finding a way to build this big stack of Digimon and then go, okay, I bring this Digimon into play. Because if you play them in the egg area, none of their own play effects trigger, but they also can't be targeted or affected by your opponent. So you can build up a big Digimon who's safe.
It's like a nursery zone aside from the game, and you can only have one Digimon in at a time, and you can just take your time raising that Digimon to its full power and then put it on the field.
Sorry, the downside there is that you can't get anything out of them. Is that it?
You can't use them while they're in the breeding area, and you can only have one there at a time. So while you've got a deck of 5 potential eggs, you can only train up one at a time.
But it means that you can be, if you've got a big play you're playing for, you can be like, okay, my deck's tactic is to develop this guy with the right Digivolutions, so he's an absolute monster. And I'm going to play him so my opponent can't just kill him immediately. When you bring them into play from the nursery, they don't have summoning sickness effectively. They can attack and do stuff immediately, which means that you can go, I can play for a big swing. Now your opponent probably sees it coming.
It's right there on the field.
Yeah. They have to be aware of that. But it means that you can get into, okay, you're building this up here, that's good. But you've got no board presence from those cards. So you're at a disadvantage that way. So there's a tug of war on it, and that's always good in a game where it's like neither one tactic is good or bad, it's just the way it is. There are 6 colours of Digimon as well. You can put whatever you want in your deck, but you can only generally digivolve Digimon of the same colour together.
There's a couple of tiny exceptions, but
yeah,
you got to go from red to red to red.
Yeah. There are some high-level ones, for example, I've got a Blitz Greymon here, who's a level 6 Digimon, and he can digivolve from red or black. So you can do some of them like that, so this can go in either deck or a dual-colour deck. But I'd say if you're starting off, you'll pick one colour and build that colour.
They seem to team the cards by colour as well, whereas a lot of the fire monsters are red, a lot of the holy monsters are yellow, and blue seems to be a mixture of water monsters and also monsters that are simply coloured blue.
Yes. But you'll see, like, there's occasional, like, a popular Digimon, like Agumon, he's in, I think, he's black and yellow colours as well. Yeah, because he's one of the faces of the franchise, so, you can't have him just siloed into one little space.
It's also something you'll notice. So I will have an Agumon card who has a cost and an effect, and you will have a card also called Agumon that has a different cost and a different effect, and maybe also a different colour. Because, like Pokemon, there's only a limited number of Digimon. They can't, like with Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! Just print monsters forever. So they just reprint the same monsters with different effects and different same name, different art, different effect, maybe a different cost. So everybody can play their favourite Digimon, but they won't all be playing the same version of their favourite Digimon. I think there's about 5 Omnimons out there already or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a fairly crunchy look at all of the rules and the way the game presents the digital monster economy.
Some of the cards are very cute as well.
But yeah, the artwork is very cute, and it is very much aimed at a preteen. The sensibilities are aimed at a preteen market. It strikes me it's quite mechanically.
The basics of the game are simple, but they seem to fit together quite nicely.
Can we talk a little bit about where it all comes from? Like this is a blatant rip-off of Pokemon, or it's...
Okay,
I vaguely remember the show.
Myself Shane between us can probably fill it out, but go ahead, Shane.
Okay, so the thing about it Digimon was, it wasn't originally meant to be a Pokemon rip-off. It was meant to be the next level of Tamagotchi.
Yeah, Tamagotchi rip-off, baby.
Yeah, it was to start off with Tamagotchis, and they were a huge thing for like a hot second. And then someone came with a bright idea, why don't we make Tamagotchis that can fight? And so you got to start getting people with these little keychain things that you could plug in together, and your different monsters could fight. And there's a big.
The original Digimon device had just metal contacts on top, and you just pushed them, your two Tamagotchi Digimon, into each other, and they brawl.
Yeah. And then Pokemon hit, and it had a comics and cartoon and all that, and said, well, obviously we need to get a comics cartoon. I think they already had like one comic, but then they just hit with the original Digimon Adventure cartoon, and it did not quite Pokemon numbers, but it did decently.
Well.
And it spawned. It didn't go away like Monster Rancher did, so it's it did something right.
Well, it continued to be a thing for a while. Like moderately successful video games, a series of failed card games, and a series of moderately successful cartoons. The main thing it had in common with Pokemon was the suffix "mon," that they were both about monsters. But where Pokemon was about eternal 10-year-olds catching monsters and dogfighting them, Digimon was more about making friends with one monster who tended to be sentient and could talk to you and had their own thoughts and opinions, and using them to save the world from some unspeakable evil. So it's a much more of a classic hero's journey than the usual. And they would use these stories to also explore the characters' backgrounds. Like the characters always have some personal trouble that they would somehow resolve through fighting with their Digimon somehow. My parents divorced, and that gave me a rough childhood, but because I could fight these Digimon against each other, I think I've resolved some of my internal trauma surrounding that.
My God, this cockfighting has really filled the hole in my soul.
But again, rather than collecting and fighting each other, you'd get one, you'd make friends with it, you'd raise it and fight some unspeakable evil who's trying to destroy the world.
Yeah, it's the show stuck in my mind. I mean, I was probably a bit too old when it hit, but I was always struck by the quality of the backgrounds, the way the world was presented. It always, in the digital realm that they were exploring, it had this kind of really nice ethereal feel to it. There was clearly a lot of craft put into the show. And Sean, you were outlining that they followed those characters throughout the various iterations. The story continued through various outlets as the years and the characters grew up.
A whole series of after the original TV show, there's a whole series of original animations that told the story before the TV show, when they were a little bit older, after, when they got to high school. Then there was another series when they were in university, and then there's a final movie came out last year in Japan, which deals with I think it's called The Last Evolution, where they have their last adventure with their Digimon. But they also had other spin-offs aside from this. These are just the ones that followed the original characters.
The main one is Digimon Adventure, I believe.
Yeah, I think it'd be very easy to make fun of that and sort of make quips about using digital monsters to pay off your student loans. But I think there's something really interesting here, that in a landscape of very sort of, sell the toy, sell the card game, commercialized cartoons, there's clearly some creative through line here that has, for one reason or another, managed to tell the story they wanted to tell by following these characters. And I think that's worth pointing out. That's worth noting. There's a little bit of added depth and complexity that it certainly seems to be reflected in the game as well. It brings me to another question. Who can I play this with? Like, I've got a young kid who's sort of learning to read and all the rest. When potentially can I use this as his gateway?
I think even a relatively young kid you could teach to play. It's not too complex to learn how to play. There's no instance. There's nothing like that. So everything is kind of played on your. The timing is pretty straightforward.
Doesn't
really.
appear to be any chains or responses.
No, so cards. In terms of playing stuff, probably around 8 and up, I'd say. Just in terms of complexity stuff, I'd say something like that.
I noticed there's a fair bit of text in some of the cards, but as everyone who's encountered an 8-year-old will know, they just memorize that stuff. So they don't even have to be able to read it.
Absolutely.
And the numbers are pretty simple as well.
Yeah. So it's the bigger guy wins. It's pretty straightforward. Bigger guy wins. I can get my guy bigger. And then you're doing a bit of math, so that's always good for young brains to get in the habit of adding.
So strategies. What's the tactical and strategic depth for the older player who doesn't care that it's based around a cartoon from 20 years ago?
There's a decent amount of strategic. It wouldn't be one of the. This is a very cunning, grindy game. No, it's smashing monsters to a certain extent, but there's a decent amount of depth in play there in terms of when you do stuff. Like I've seen far less deep games with big adult followings. This one is actually there's a fair amount you can do with it and play it differently, and you can be the Timmy evolving the perfect Digimon in your safe area, and then bring them out and they do something, and that's good because it means if someone can end up losing the game because of that, but at least they got to do their thing. And that's often all certain types of players want. Whereas if they're like, okay, I'll bring this guy out and I'll enchant him, and someone's like, kill. Oh, you can evolve your monster at home, nice and safe, so he will come out and at least get to swing once.
You'll get your big monster, which is often, I think, the promise that's sold from certain games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. The card games, I mean, they're all about getting your Charizard or your Mewtwo or there's so many powerful Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards I can't even remember any of their names. But getting your boss onto the field, and it's just so much more straightforward and easy in Digimon than in those other games. So you'll get your boss onto the field whether you win or lose.
Yeah. And for a player who's a bit more of a combo, they'll love the idea of I can just cycle everything out really quick and I can get to my thing. And that's good. You'll see, I'd say, almost all of your deck in a game. You don't want to see all your deck because then you'll lose. But you can see almost all of your deck in during a game. So yeah, that's good. There's definitely different through lines in the different kind of colors in terms of what they do. So yellow, like there's 3 starters out at the moment for red, yellow, and blue. Red is really good at attacking and smashing face. Blue is at its best when it's removed all the Digivolutions from your opponent's card.
It likes the sap resources.
From the yellow, basically thing is a lot of security stuff. Yeah, they can effectively like heal, and they're basically good on the defense. So yeah, it's there's a lot going on there. And
there's more colors, so there'll be more decks. So there'll probably be more to happen.
Black, purple, and green, who are also in the boosters, but they don't have starters yet. If you were looking at getting into this and you wanted just to take a test, buy 2 starters, or even buy 3 starters.
Smash them against each other.
And smash them against each other. And they're like, I think they're,
they're
12,
like,
15 each?
I think they're ORP about $13.95, but Games World is selling them for a couple of quid under that.
So if you want to try it out, it's relatively cheap.
So specialist game stores are carrying it. You get it on Amazon. Will it show up in toy stores? You think?
It may. Certainly Yu-Gi-Oh! Used to show up in toy stores, but other card games less so.
There's big distribution problems in the States. It's all sold out everywhere, and shops are gouging. So, that's not a bad sign. It's just that's the way it is currently. If you were getting into it from a more constructed player point of view, I bought a box of boosters and cracked it to just see, okay, what's this like? How much do I get? I would say 2 boxes would get you a playset of all the commons, and it would get you nearly a playset of all the uncommons. You'd probably need 3 boxes to get a playset of the uncommons. You'd probably need 4 to get a playset of the rares. So if you're kind of looking to strike the middle ground, if you got 2 boxes, there's 2 sets out. If you got 2 boxes of each of those sets, you would have all the commons, you would have most of the uncommons, and then you would have a selection of, there are super rares and secret rares who are all high level Digimon. They are.
What are you 400 in the hole at that point?
Oh yes, you are. If you're going in hard, you're going in hard.
Often shiny. Some of them have alternate art. Some of them have full art. I don't know if I have a full art one on hand, which means no borders on them.
I went around looking at prices, and they're kind of, most of the super rares I got 8 in a box, which means 1 in 3 boosters roughly. And what you would be paying if you went online looking to buy singles where you can get them in stock, because they're pretty sold out at the moment, they were between 5 and 25 for the super rares. Like 1 or 2 of the super rares were higher price. And I went around looking at deck lists, and the deck lists are not all super rares. There's generally someone might play 4 to 8 super rares in their deck. So if you were splitting between, if you went in 4, you say, and said, let's split this, let's throw 100 each in, and I'll take blue and black, and you take red and yellow or whatever. You do a snake draft on the colours or whatever you do, and then you split that way. I think you could then spend another 50, 60 picking up a few singles, and you'd probably have some pretty good decks. So,
do you think there'll be a competitive scene for this? Yeah.
You never know. I think Flesh and Blood is going to have a competitive scene because I see a lot of the older gamers gravitating to that. Magic will always have a competitive scene. This one might, but it's hard to say. I don't know how much purchase Digimon has in young people, but it probably has quite a good purchase in mid to late 20s, So you might see a different faction of nostalgic players going back, and this one has enough depth to have a decent thing. This could be second generation, or this could be, I played a Yu-Gi-Oh when I was a kid. This is a better card game. I remember Digimon as well. Hey, I might just play this. And you could have a second. You could possibly have a second player base off this, but it's interesting, and I'll always take a look at the CCG.
It's always hard to tell if a CCG has legs or not. Like they can have good design, they can have a good early launch, but then just the interest just might not be there.
Yeah, no guarantee of nothing.
And do you have any options to? The irony now comes from this question. Any options to play online?
Webcam games seems to be the really popular one, and I don't know if it's a tabletop simulator, but I know tournaments are being held with webcams. They did a home launch kit, which I thought was funny, where you could basically spend I think it was $25, and you got a bunch of 3 different sets of sleeves for your Digi Eggs and a booster box for the winner in your house. So you can have a little tournament in your house against 3 other people, and I won. I thought that's cute. That's a good chance.
Embracing the reality.
Yeah. That's where we are right now.
So it's a digital monster fighting game with no digital footprint to speak of, which is sort of a refreshing take for this.
There is also a tutorial app you can get, it is not as polished as say Hearthstone, but you can play the game digitally if you want to try it out for free as well, and it gives you an idea of how the game works. It's not super Hearthstone polished, but it's perfectly reasonable.
You'll learn the game from it. Any more thoughts, Mick or Shane?
So I was just looking up. Apparently, they are actually just rebooting the original cartoon as of last year.
Yeah, complete reboot, because the original story hit its end when they all graduated college. So they've just started over again with the same characters, back to 10 years old, new story.
It's time for me to stop cockfighting and get a mortgage, yeah?
yeah. But they just started over again with the same characters, but they're kids again. So quite popular as I understand it, but of course it is a kids show, so your mileage may vary.
Well, it's so hard to judge what is and isn't grabbing children's attention these days with this sort of the fracturing of all sorts of markets. My 6-year-old is very taken with the works of a guy called Trevor Henderson, who you might know from Cartoon Cat or Long Horse or any number of quite frankly horrifying entities. But for some, it's we're way down the rabbit hole now. But appears to engage with them on an entirely sort of wholesome level. They hold the same sort of place in his imagination as Mickey Mouse. So it's
What about those happy tree fans?
Yeah, there you go. Back in the oh man, we're dating ourselves now. If anyone would like to talk, when are we getting our Get Along Gang CCG? That's the one I'd put serious money down for.
You've left me behind now. That's obviously before my time.
My big nostalgia kick was the Transformers CCG when it came out, and it was great. And then away. But I bought a ton of it. I have a ton of it at home. It is my go-to convention game now. I'll be bringing along decks for people to try out. So you can always buy it like that.
Right. I'm very tempted to pick up a few starters for this and give it a go. So I'm gonna hit the friendly local game store and see if they've got anything in stock.
Oh, that's always a good sign. Any other thoughts, Shane?
Yeah, I can see. It's interesting to see the franchise because I've seen the original Digimon card game from back in the late 90s, and it was, it did not look good. But yeah, this one seems to have really caught the appeal as like you want to have this Digivolution mechanic to be very important, but you also want to have a CCG where you can actually play your things.
I feel basing it on a designed game helps.
Yeah. So yeah, getting the flow of Monster Evolution right is very important. So it's good to see that they seem to have made some pretty good steps with very simple mechanics in that regard. So yeah, I'm rooting for this one. I think. Let's see if we can go get a bit of distance in it.
Well, there you have it. That's certainly first impressions on the Digimon game. But like we said, who knows if it's got legs. If you have any thoughts or comments, you can obviously catch us on social media and on Discord. Details in the outro, I assume. Details in the outro? Yeah, I've got a thumbs up. Details in the outro. But for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party was released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.